So you've been to China twice.
Twice.
Why did you go in the first place?
Whew. So when I was in grad school, we would train at there was a local training center that we had kind of like built up, and it was the Olympic training site for USA Weightlifting and USA Taekwondo, and there was also like an MMA gym. So we would go there and we would train Olympic weightlifting. And the coach there at the time, Jianping Ma of Ma Strength, some people that are on Instagram or social media probably know that name. They post a lot of Chinese weightlifting videos. So we would always grill this guy as many questions as we could ask, and he speaks good English, but there would be some times where we'd kind of like overwhelm him or stump him, like basically ask him everything. What do you eat? Where do your eyes move? What kind of shoes? What kind of shoelaces? So we were kind of those like pestering beginner type people. And eventually he just kind of like came to the conclusion. He's like, would you guys want to go to China? And so he still had connections at some of the training bases. And so he had originally organized a group to go of just like enthusiasts. Weightlifting's, I'd say, a little more popular now, but then it was not quite as mainstream. But we were just so into it, just from our experience at the college and knowing the benefits of Olympic weightlifting for sports. So the first trip we went to like a smaller provincial base where they train the kids, like when they're kind of beginners and then they start to become intermediates. The second time we went to like Beijing Sports University, and there were a lot of people on the trip that took videos and stuff. You'll see them circulating on YouTube. That would have been the first trip. Would have been 2008.
Okay.
That was the first time I went. Yeah.
The kids gym, or like the youth training center.
Yep, that would have been 2008.
How young were the kids?
The youngest I saw there was a 7-year-old kid who had recently transitioned in from. He was with the swimming group. So over there, they hand select their athletes. So this kid had been with the swimmers based on his genetic profile or his skill set. And he had recently transitioned into weightlifting. So he was legit like brand new. So he was 7. And then I think the oldest there at this particular base was 15 or 16. Boys and girls. And it was pretty cool.
So do you know, like, did they explain how it works? Like, so they just live there and it's like a boarding school, or they?
Yeah, so there's what's the academy in Florida? The IMG or IMT, similar to what I would expect that to be. So once they're selected, then they go and they're there. So I think the children's base was kids that lived in the province. So then they were kind of like selected from schools to go to this particular sports school. And then they get handpicked based on predisposition to sports. If you have if you're a little taller or longer limbed, you maybe play volleyball. If you fit the criteria for weightlifting, you go into the weightlifting. So the kids live on site. So like their typical day is they wake up in the morning, they come to training, they do their warm-up, training session, cool down, stretch, massage, maybe go to like a morning class, then they go to lunch, then they train again in the afternoon, and then they live on site. So then their school work is kind of like interspersed around their training. So it's serious, but it's not the highest level. So then the second time I went was the interim or the intermediates, where basically like these kids had kind of the next step up from that original base. So they were more not professional yet, but some of these guys were like pretty close to becoming professionals. And this base in particular had produced a couple professional Olympians, and those guys were actually happened to be there when I was there, which was pretty cool. And it was kind of like an up and coming base. So I'd say like that's more like the minor league equivalent for like, baseball, not quite professional, but you might see some guys that are going to get to that level, get to the Olympics, set records and stuff like that. And then I'd say the children's base was more like a kind of like a university or like a really competitive high school type situation. Not what you would think for like grade school. Like the intensity and the seriousness of the training for even 7 and 8 year olds was, I'd say, more like competitive high school environment, or even like collegiate was how well these kids were training at a young age.
Do you remember how they structured it? Because I know like in some of the videos, or even when we had the Chinese weightlifting seminar, there's one coach for like a handful of athletes. Is that the same thing for like the youth?
The youth, yeah. So you saw a little bit of each. So there was like, I'd say the age range from like 13 to 15 or 16, there was one coach probably overseeing maybe 15 athletes. You could see that those kids already had technique. They already understood the training. They took it a little more seriously. The kids that were a little bit younger, I'd say there were like maybe 2 or 3 coaches for roughly 15 to 20 kids. So there was a little more hands-on. They would kind of go in a sequence. So like one kid would go kind of go around back to the end of the line. Next kid comes up. So it was a little bit more like a practice, so to speak. The older group required a little bit less hands-on. They knew how to train. You kind of saw them go about their business, and the coach could kind of just walk around, he could oversee more of them at the same time.
Mm-hmm. And what did their training look like?
So I actually posted some compilation videos from both trips, actually. It was very structured. So everyone comes in and they would warm up as a group. So as tedious as that might sound, no one was too good for the general warm-up. So you got maybe 50, 60 total athletes in a big training hall. Everybody groups up, warms up together. They count, as they're doing the wrist stretches, shoulder circles, all that kind of stuff. They're counting. It kind of creates like a good, like disciplined work type environment. Once that's done, everybody kind of peels off.
So what is like the warm-up? What is like general calisthenics?
General calisthenics usually was a jog, and then from like joint to joint, just general movement. Nothing too complicated, nothing, you wouldn't.
So no barbell?
No, yeah, general body weight. Literally just like joint articulations and basic stuff, wrist circles, fingers, stuff basically from head to toe. Every joint got moved in every which way. And yeah, there usually was like a decent jog, maybe like a 5-minute jog. With the kids, I noticed it was more pronounced. It was a little bit longer. And then with the guys that were the intermediates, a little bit shorter, but there was some kind of like get your heart rate up type. Couple of the days, the older guys, the warm-ups were more specific, where there wasn't like a long run or general warm-up. And then from there, everybody peeled off. And what I found was the most impressive, and what I've tried to duplicate here at our gym, was as soon as the warm-up was done, nobody wandered around, nobody wasted time, nobody screwed around. Everybody went right to work, and you could tell they really respected that there was like a window. Like, I'm warmed up, and I'm here to do something. And then afterwards, once all the stretching and massage and all that stuff was done, there was plenty of screwing around. But up to that point, and these are kids. These are 8-year-old kids. And it was pretty cool to see. As soon as the warm-up was done, they all peeled off. Shoes were on. And they all seemed to know exactly what they were supposed to do. There was no whiteboard. There was no paper. There was no anything. They all just like peeled off. And everybody just like got to work. And you saw all kinds of crazy stuff going on. So either the workout was like communicated to them even before they went, or they reviewed it, maybe at like their bunks or whatever. Maybe there's like a preliminary meeting. We did see a couple meetings like after practice. I remember they had like a nutritional talk. Someone was giving a talk, and then I think they had like a recovery one. So, and this was all in Chinese too. So, but I was just getting like a general sense. And a lot of the stuff, I tried to ask as many questions as possible, but you were just kind of like taking it all in, because only a couple people spoke both Chinese and English. So it was like, you're trying to get as much information as you could, but it wasn't feasible to get like every question answered and all that kind of stuff. So it was a lot going on, but that stood out to me, is that every kid peeled off after the warm-up, knew exactly what the goal was for the day. You could see some themes in the workouts, like for, these guys would be doing maybe cleans from the blocks, or kids that struggled are maybe doing like clean pulls from the blocks. And then the older kids, instead of cleans from the blocks, are maybe doing like, clean plus front squat plus jerk, or like variations. And you could see some themes for the day. Yeah. So, and then the coaches were very hands-on with the younger kids. Like you could tell they wanted to get accomplished for the day, positional work, or just repetition type work, footwork. Yeah. And then the session, so like from there, then it would ultimately end up in usually some type of like metabolic bodybuilding work to support whatever main movement for the day. And even that was impressive because like, a lot of females would love to be able to do pull-ups. And here you'd see like a 9-year-old girl do a heavy snatch workout and then walk over and pound out sets of 10, like kipping pull-ups like it was nothing, and then superset with dips, like strict dips, like impressive stuff. So some of these kids, I had to assume that they had either like a gymnastics, you say background, but they're only 9, but like maybe they have just dispositions to like gymnastics or weightlifting. So you could see there was like some kind of prerequisite talent for some of these kids, like pounding out pull-ups for young girls and stuff like that. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah. So what like sets, reps? I'm assuming that most of them are just trying to build the best technique possible. So how many sets would you say they're doing? Were there reps?
A lot of sets, and then the reps were kind of like dictated by ability. So the younger kids were doing more reps, I'd say. The older kids, you'd see some pretty like aggressive rep work, but the older kids would do less reps, I'd say, a little bit higher intensity to what they were doing. The younger kids were still, there was pretty good intensity to what was going on, but there were more reps and you didn't see hardly any missing. Maybe some mistakes here and there, but you didn't see like kids stumbling around with barbells and, really bad misses. Even the older kids, they'd like ramp up, and then maybe you saw some missing on some of the higher intensity days, but usually that was, once you saw a miss, maybe there was one more attempt, or usually there were drop sets with like remedial technique right away. You didn't see guys just missing weights continuously and just, I'm going to get this.
Yeah. So some of them were doing singles, not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Older kids.
Older?
Yeah.
So usually always 2, 3.
Beginners were, complex. More reps, a lot of reps. So they'd go like from high hang. You'd see a lot of like, power snatch, reset, drop, correction from the coach, power snatch, reset, drop. And then they were kind of evaluating. And they would let the kids touch a little intensity, but it always had to be perfect. And once it was perfect, then you'd see the bar weight just increase very slightly. The older guys had a plan for the day, what was expected, and then they would kind of like ramp up. And there was usually high intensity with whatever was assigned. That was one thing that I noticed in all the Chinese programs, even the one that I was training under at the time, was like when something was deloaded, it was just a lighter movement in general. So the one day when they came in on Thursday, like some of the guys, it was like a much more relaxed environment. The warm-up was a little bit shorter, and then they kind of like spread out. And there were guys doing like split cleans, and then guys doing like muscle snatch with no shoes on. So you could tell it was like an accessory, and like they chose movements on that day that were just kind of like a deload, and they were kind of having some fun with it, like doing muscle snatches with no shoes, and like you could tell the atmosphere was a little bit more relaxed, and maybe that was planned and intentional.
So the youth athletes were not really doing traditional full snatch, full clean and jerk, full cleans.
Some were. I'd say the clean and jerk was usually broken up. So if they were doing jerk, the one day, so usually like Friday in the Chinese program is like where you do some intensity. So you would see kids like start to do some heavier attempts where maybe there was some missing. The older guys seem to ramp up and maybe miss with most of their lifts, or at least get to the point where it was pretty close. The younger kids, I only saw maybe like 1 or 2 days where they kind of took the restrictors off and like let them do some heavy stuff. There was, I got a video of a younger kid. I don't know if the translation was correct, but I think they said his age was 8 years old, and he does like a clean and jerk. There's a video on YouTube, and like really grinds out the clean, and you're you're watching this effort from an 8-year-old kid, grinds out the clean, and then just like nails the jerk, and you're like, oh my god, you didn't really understand what you were watching. And then that was kind of where the moment where I knew that there was something unique to the situation, and there's no doubt why these guys are producing world records and the best athletes. So
So it's kind of like, what would you say is, so you said the youngest one was 8 that you saw? Yeah. So that's typical age for them to start developing?
There was the 7-year-old, the swimmer kid, and then the coach kind of like nudged me and then said through the interpreter, he's 7 and he's brand new. Like kind of like you could tell he was proud of his technique. The kid looked like he was kind of having a rough go of it. Like it wasn't his favorite thing in the world, but it was impressive how sharp the kid's technique was for being a beginner and being 7 years old. So.
Yeah. So when you were there, you stayed at the training base in like a dorm, or where were you housed?
Yeah, that's a good question. No, the first time I went, we were not at the training base. The second time, we were at the training base. We ate in the cafeteria with them, so we got to actually eat what they eat. We were kind of like treated like an athlete, so to speak, trained with them. The first time, there was not a lot of, I don't know if anyone had ever seen this before. So a bunch of Americans come walking in, and they're just like, this is mainland China. Maybe never even seen an American before in their life. So, yeah, we were staying off-site the first time we went. So Jianping was hosting us, so he would throw together meals and stuff. So it wasn't the whole experience. The second time he organized it, it was at Beijing University. So we actually stayed at I think it's Beijing University. I don't know the exact name, but it's the Beijing Sports University or whatever. So second time we stayed at the facility and at the cafeteria, and they got the whole experience.
So the first time, what was like the itinerary for the days that you were there?
So the first time I went, it was more like we were there for the enthusiasm of it, at least a lot of us. I was kind of looking at it, I wanted to learn as much as I could, because one of the things that I was most fascinated with was, I think people look at feats of strength that they can't understand, and they immediately assume that there's some kind of like drugs or steroids but the more I started to learn about how they raise these young athletes, it kind of started to make sense how this could be possible. So when I was there, I was really trying to like study the process. So the itinerary was loose. So like if you wanted to go to the training, there'd be like a van after breakfast, and you could go or not. And so there was a morning session and then a PM session. So some people wanted to go to both. Some people wanted to go sightseeing in the afternoon. So it just kind of depended. But I wanted to be there as much as possible. One of the things that was a little bit punishing about the experience both times is it is insanely hot. I can't put into words how hot it is. It's like,
so you went during the summer?
Oh my God, both times. It was like 100 degrees with 100% humidity. It's hard to put it into words. You'd walk outside from your air conditioning and you would be sweating through your clothes. I mean, I'm a heavy sweater anyway, but it was funny for me to watch people that don't normally sweat like that get so uncomfortable with their clothes just being like sopping wet, and it was so hot. So not everybody wanted to go to the training consistently. So they'd be like, I'm going to sit this one out, because it was a little exhausting.
AC in the training hall?
No. So if you can imagine the strips of platform, so there'd be long strips of platform with like finished wood and then rubber on the sides. And I could tell they were starting to get annoyed with me, because what would happen is I would lift in the same spot, and dude, you can't wear clothes. It's not even like feasible. There's very few shirts. I mean, the girls wore shirts, but very few shirts. Guys just in spandex. That's about it. And whether or not you wanted to dress like that, it ultimately happened. So I would sweat so much, dude. You're getting like puddles of sweat where it was not safe to lift like that, because your feet would slip. So I'd start scooting back, and the guys behind me were starting to get like annoyed. Like, dude, this big, sloppy, sweaty American is taking up like 40 feet of platform space, because I had to keep sliding back. So yeah, the heat was punishing. So this typical schedule was like morning, afternoon, but people were trying to do sightseeing, and Jianping was trying to be like a good host. So he'd take us to go get massages, or, go see local whatever. The second trip we went to the Great Wall, so some of it was fun, but it was kind of whatever you wanted to handle. Definitely sat out a couple afternoon training sessions, like trying to keep up with those guys for 2 training sessions in that heat, with just so much going on. It was like, I think I'm gonna sit this one
Even
out.
with the kids, keeping up with the kids.
Dude, 15-year-old kids. I think I saw at the time, I can't remember what my numbers were exactly. I think I snatched like 105 kilos, and maybe like, I think I just cleaned like 130 kilos or something like that. I saw a 15-year-old kid clean and jerk 155. There were girls that were snatching what I could snatch. So what was amazing was the first trip, I think I could snatch like 100 or 105. And by the end of the trip, I think I snatched 115. And I think it was just out of sheer environment. You're getting out snatched by basically I'm going to jump underneath this weight at all costs. And another thing that I picked up when I was there too was how to catch a snatch, how to support the weight overhead that I didn't really understand. And what I saw was this guy kept gesturing to this one kid that missed a couple snatches behind. And he kept giving him the same gesture. And I'm like, I think I know what he's saying. And when I started trying to do it in my snatches, it felt way more secure. And then later that afternoon, we came back and I worked on it. I actually went kind of heavy. And so at the time I was a 105 snatch. I caught 115 in the bottom of the snatch. And I was so excited that I finally understood how to support that kind of weight overhead. And when I went to stand up, I'd never felt that much weight over my head, and it was super unstable, and I dropped it. And I'll never forget, the female coach just basically started laughing at me, pointed at me, and just basically used me as an example for how pathetic I was to not be able to snatch 115 kilos.
So what was the cue?
So he kept gesturing to internally rotate your shoulder and push into the bar. Don't just let it come down. You have to actively resist all the way through the stand up. And at the time, like I said, weightlifting wasn't that popular, and we were trying to learn it. There wasn't instructional videos on YouTube and these really intricate videos that these guys now make because people have access to them on the internet. So just the gesture and the body language, he was communicating what you are supposed to do. I'm like, that's kind of interesting. And I tried it. All of a sudden my shoulder, I could actually support the weight, whereas snatch always kind of felt like a strange movement. And I think for a lot of people it is. And so then when I thought about it, and then I got clarification from the coaches, they're like, you got to kind of internally rotate your shoulder into the bar. And that's a debated topic, but it speaks for itself. So since then, my snatch has gone up astronomically just from understanding that concept and then teaching it to people over the years. Now it's kind of gotten more mainstream where people want to talk about it and actually teach how to lock out a snatch. And it definitely helps. But
So the first trip you were still in grad school?
No, I had just finished.
So were you working or?
So it was the summer that I finished grad school. So that was when, that was when I was working at the training center in Iowa, in Cedar Falls, and Jianping was coaching there. So we were training, so we were learning Olympic weightlifting. And then I think it was that summer that we went on the trip. And then, then I started the gym shortly after. So it was kind of in succession.
Mm-hmm. So the first time you went after coming back, what were the best takeaways you had other than catching the snatch that way?
The environment, 100%. Just being around people that are pushing the envelope. They're doing everything correctly and they're pushing the envelope, and their goal is to get better. It's weightlifting. They were trying to get better every day and trying to drive their numbers up. And just the environment and the professionalism, we're here to do something, we might as well do it right. There was no screwing around. There was no wasting time screwing around. These are young kids. And you could really see that if you really focus yourself on one thing, that it'll improve and that there was no fluff. And another takeaway was that kids are extremely resilient, and as long as it's fair dosage or fair expectations, it's amazing what you can get the human body to do. So I think sometimes people look at professional athletes or they see the finished product and they go, oh, that guy's gifted, or that guy's special, or he has genetics, or, oh, look at his dad. Well, usually there's a backstory. So let's take a baseball player, for example. The guy's in the major leagues and he throws 100 miles an hour and people, oh my God, he's a freak. Okay, so maybe he's got genetic predisposition. He's got long arms. He's 6'4". That gives him predisposition, but not every 6'4" guy throws 100 miles an hour. So what did he do to develop himself to throw 100 miles an hour? So one of the things when we first met Jianping Ma, we were college athletes. So some of us were what we thought was at the peak of our athleticism, trying to do maybe like a 90-kilo snatch. There were guys that were, trying to be Olympic hopefuls in track and field, doing certain numbers. I'll never forget the first day Jianping comes walking in, 54 years old, I think, at the time. And a guy was repeatedly missing a 100-kilo snatch. Just couldn't figure it out. Jianping comes walking into the weight room, spins his hat around, power cleans the weight, and does a strict press with 220 pounds, 54 years old, and the guy weighs probably 165 pounds. When you see something special, and that, to me, I was like, this guy, I need to know how that just happened. Yeah. And that was when he would show you, you either listened or you didn't. And again, so people write it off, those guys use drugs but then when I started to get the backstory, it all started to add up. It made sense. This is how you develop an athlete from start to finished product. And the best of the best will become Olympians and world record holders. Some people won't. But basically, if you want to see how far you can take your potential, how high your ceiling really is, here's how you do it. And every kid there was bought into that. And it created an environment that was special, really. And everybody was getting better by association, and the expectations were just laid out. There's no conversation about it. And so kids are very resilient. And so if you give them expectations and you show them a path and help them walk that path, then you can develop some pretty special athletes.
So it sounds like it was pretty serious, but then obviously they're kids. So was there some fun aspect to it for them? You saying after the massage and stuff they were messing up?
Yeah, as soon as the work was done, massage, then they became normal kids. They're wrestling and chasing each other around and shadow boxing and goofing around. The girls were making us bracelets and stuff like that. So then they were normal kids. But when the work was being done, then you kind of tone it down.
So they knew when they're at the gym, it's serious.
Right.
Nice.
Right.
So then for the second trip, where were you at in your life? The gym was, you said after the first one, you just opened the gym. Yeah. So how long into the gym being open?
So, boy, it might have been 2 years later, 3 years later. So this would have been 2011, 2012. I could check dates. But it was, my wife came with me, God bless her. She was starting to get into weightlifting.
But so from your first experience, what made you want to go back again?
Oh, so I saw where the kids were trained. And then the second time it came around was to see the finished product, the professionals, the higher level guys, and what that looks like on a daily basis. And again, I don't like to leave stones unturned. If you can accumulate knowledge and, not only was it fun and interesting and just to get some cultural perspective, but when this opportunity came around, so that was, I guess, where I was going with my wife, hey, I'm thinking about going back to China. I'll go with you. So she was into it. So we kind of made a vacation out of it the second time around. So it was still fun, but still serious. So I still got to accumulate information. And I don't recommend Beijing in the summertime though. It's pretty brutal.
So you were talking about now you stayed in the dorms with them.
Yeah.
So what are the dorms like?
So I think being in Beijing, some of the facilities have been really built up with with everything going on with the Olympics. So all the facilities were like top of the line. So from what I could gather, these facilities were like recently updated and were kind of like guest quality type accommodations, I guess. So it was pretty nice, like super nice actually, like the equivalent of like a Holiday Inn Express or so, just like a nice clean sheets and everything like that. Nice finishes.
College dorm or something, more like a hotel.
Yeah, similar to like a hotel. Nice facilities. The campus was clean, isolated from the city. The cities there pretty hustling and like very crowded, and the streets are crowded, but this was kind of like carved out, so it was kind of nice.
So what was the schedule for the athletes at the time, and then like you guys as the tourists, like visiting and seeing how they're training?
Yeah, so breakfast first thing in the morning, followed by training. Usually there's a break after breakfast, but training was still fairly early, like 9 a.m.
What type of training?
That was usually like a lighter session for most guys, or some guys used it as like a strength session and kind of like a tune-up for the day, and then the PM was heavy. So that sounds like a lot for someone who's not in great shape, but for those guys that they have to keep exposing their bodies to the loading to get the adaptations that they want over time. And so that morning session was a little more relaxed. I guess relaxed is not, I'd say a little bit less intensity to it overall. They'd still go hard at stuff, but it wasn't the maxing their clean and jerks and stuff like that. There'd be like some good rep work and, maybe like a tough back squat session or something like that, kind of to prep for the afternoon. So breakfast, break, training in the morning, massage, all the stuff that they need to do to prep for the afternoon, lunch, nap, afternoon training. And the afternoon training was a little bit less total work, but like something concentrated and something very heavy.
All the time, very heavy.
Yeah. So I remember the first time I came in for the morning session, I'm like, these guys are strong, but I can hang with these guys. And then I realized that was just their like morning workout.
Well, when we say very heavy, like relative to them, or like even like, or just high percentage work all the time? I guess it's hard to say if you didn't see like the written program, but yeah, I know they lift crazy.
High percentage.
Okay.
A lot of sets. And yeah, like even in terms of like international standards, like there was a super heavy guy that did like a pretty brutal squat workout. I watched him. He did a clean into a hang clean into a jerk. I think he worked up to like 205 kilos, and he was working on the same bar as another guy who, I think this guy's still a professional. I don't remember his name off the top of his head, but he worked up to a 210 clean and jerk at 94 kilos. So those are like international standard numbers. So there was some crazy stuff going on.
Mm-hmm. So what type of stuff were they eating for breakfast?
Breakfast, I don't remember as much because I think we were so tired all the time that we skipped breakfast or had breakfast in our room. Yeah. Breakfast, I don't remember as much, but lunch, dinner was a lot of greens with various assortments of seafood prepared with like spices, a lot of soups, like bone broth type soups. They're real big on like oranges and watermelon, I'm assuming for like the hydration. Yeah. And then they always had some kind of like kefir drink, like a yogurt milk type drink with probiotics and stuff like on the way out that some kids would take it, some kids wouldn't. But we liked it because it was like a little sweet taste to finish it off. I'm trying to think if anything else stood out. Yeah, a lot of like lean protein, just prepared in a way that it was like tasty, good spices and a lot of vegetables. Some like noodles, rice, but I didn't see a huge emphasis on that kind of stuff. Okay. I think that was more for. And then I remember talking to one of the coaches. They actually had like a basketball team there also, and so the nutritional guidelines for some of these athletes were different. You could tell. Like some of the guys were heavy on the noodles, like the basketball players and stuff. And then the weightlifters, depending on if they were trying to gain or lose weight, I think would eat more or less carbohydrate depending.
Interesting. So when you went the second time, who were you following, their programming, or you just did whatever?
Tried to, but they were doing full variations of the movement, which were like, if you're not prepped for that, so they're doing full snatches, full clean, squatting, like the knees so like I thought I was in good shape, I thought I was strong and I thought I was fit, but like then you get there and you're like, I got some work to do. So yeah, we would try to follow it, and I actually journaled like what I did for the week. So just to like recall and like get some perspective on how to train and like how they were splitting the body parts and stuff like that. So.
And were their coaches looking at you guys and like giving cues, correcting, or?
They were not impressed. They knew we had some work to do. So, I thought I was pretty cool. I think I snatched. I tried to do 137 for a double, and I thought I was pretty cool. And then I think I missed the second one, and they almost like kind of scoffed. And then I then witnessed the guy who was a little bit smaller than me do a hang snatch double at 150 kilos with like not even really a risk of missing. So then it was, again, you like start to realize like, wow, this is their sport, and you're seeing like a finished product, it was pretty cool. Impressive. So I followed along. So I would try to do roughly what they were doing, but then I would kind of like peel off where I needed to. And I think they would do the same. There was a general plan, and then they'd peel off where they needed to. Some guys would like squat really hard. Some guys would bodybuild hard, more noticeably than others. So what I did is I picked, because I noticed people kind of had some variation for individual. So I picked like 4 people, and I would kind of watch them, and I'd just jot down what they were doing. And there was definitely variation to what they were doing. So if the emphasis was maybe like a snatch, you would see some guys would be going from the hang, some guys would be going from the floor, some guys would do power plus full, or like snatch pull, then from the hang. So there was variation. And then some guys would bodybuild more than others. This one guy was like, I feel like they squatted him almost every session. So squat must have been something that he was definitely trying to work on. So,
But even though there's variation, is whatever session it is, everyone is doing clean, or everyone is focusing on snatch, or is there a combination of?
I'd say for the most part, some variation of it.
But it's just like the main movement is kind of the same.
Yeah. In the kids' base, maybe it was a little different. Like you'd see some younger girls doing like snatch work, but maybe everybody else was doing clean and jerk. So yeah, that was a little different. But yeah, maybe the theme was the same for the day. And so that was what I found very interesting too. Like, did every kid know how to auto-regulate? So this is a concept too that we talk about a lot. Like, do they know where they should peel off and when they should stick to the program? So, and that one of the sayings that I picked up was that the paper can take anything. Like, the paper will call for it, the program will call for something, and if it's not in the cards for you, then you have to know when to and how to make that call, that peel off where needed. And the term auto-regulation, you read about it in textbooks and stuff, but to see it play out, the kids almost knew where to do what was necessary for them. And we kind of saw that in Jean Ping's programs. Was he would tell each and every one of us, like, your speed and your technique are really good, but you need to focus on building more strength. Or your strength is really good, but your technique and speed and precision could benefit. Or you need to work on this flaw and focus on that. And so we would start to peel off. So there was the general program, and then we would start to like peel off from it. So that was kind of also what fueled the individualized concept. Was like at the college with athletes, you had to peel off. So you'd have a general plan, and then, man, like that guy's got elbow issues, or so you'd be peeling off here and there, and then you saw the same thing. So I saw the same theme, and I'm like, yeah, that kind of like reinforced my idea that individualized was important. Like, people needed to know how to. They had to be educated enough when and where, and live to fight another day.
Yeah. So, what were the big takeaways from the second trip? Sounds like the individual, like the peeling off part of someone focusing more on squat, or mostly on bodybuilding was one of the things, but anything else stick out?
Man, that's a good question. Put me on the spot with that one. So those guys were trying to like make it to the next level. Mm-hmm. So you could, there was a little bit of a sense of urgency, and you could tell through the intensity, like these guys were putting themselves in harm's way to try to get to the numbers that they needed to get to. I also saw like some supplement use. There are a lot of guys take creatine, and another thing that was pretty popular was like glucose tabs. So as they were training and it's that hot and you're going for like 60, 90-minute sessions, you'd see like creatine would start flying, or like glucose tabs were popular. And yeah, just the like the intensity of the situation again, like the younger base, the environment was very professional, very like, we're here to do something, we're here to work, we all have a common task. The intermediate, you almost got that sense of urgency, like I have to make it, I have to. I actually saw a couple guys like the one guy, I think I said he clean and jerk 210. I think like shortly after whatever he was doing, I saw him pull up, hold his back, and go kind of limping out to go get some treatment. And then I think the rest of the week he didn't really do anything heavy. So they were really going to the extremes. Mm-hmm. Whereas the younger base was pretty much the habit, the environment, the basics, the foundation. The older guys were like, we have the foundation, now we're really pushing the envelope, really experimenting with what the human body can handle.
Mm-hmm. So you talked about like massages, recovery. Was there any other thing you saw in terms of recovery that they're doing? Recovery?
No, so they kind of like, they would do their general massage, accessory work, a lot of like walking. They would do the cupping. The cupping, they use the actual like fire cups. So you put like a fire underneath, and it sucks the oxygen, then they stick the cup on. I actually did that. That one feels pretty good. The general cups are good, but the fire too has got like some warmth to it. They were even saying too, they do like acupuncture inside. So they'll do a needle to get it started and then put a cup over the top, kind of like a double whammy. But then they would go, so as soon as that was done, then they would actually go and get like athletic type training, like actual massage. So they would do like partner massage. If you needed more, yeah, you'd go do your body work. There was ice, and they use saunas too, which I don't think would have been necessary at that point. But yeah, like ice baths and all that kind of stuff.
Gotcha. And did they do the same like type of warm up the youths were doing?
Yeah, it was actually pretty consistent. So I wonder if there's like a main governing body that like, here's our warm up. It was, yeah, very similar actually. No one's too good for the warm up.
Yeah, for sure. So what type of sightseeing did you get to do?
The Great Wall.
What was that like?
A lot crazier than you'd expect after seeing it. So you see it and you see these like it looks like a nice smooth path, and not a lot of undulation to it. It is some of the steepest, craziest terrain. And to think that people were up there on these like little cliffs, and a lot of life was lost building that. So you get up there and you're in the heat and there's a ton of people. And I remember we got to a couple of different parts, and I turned to my wife. I'm like, dude, this is borderline dangerous. And they tell you repeatedly, be careful. Like there's old spots that could like break away. So we're kind of like, we're at like a 45-degree angle. And all of a sudden on my side, some woman is sitting full squat on her sandals and just like sliding. She's sliding down almost like she's sitting on a sled. And I'm like, this is dangerous. This is not what you would think on like a postcard or something.
Yeah. What other crazy? I know a lot of crazy stuff happened. You left some shoes there.
Oh my God. So the humidity. So you're sweating so much. So my weightlifting shoes actually sweated all the way through the soles of the shoes.
Wood sole, right?
Yeah. And we would get back to the hotel because it was actually air conditioned, but everything was so like damp and moist. Dude, the soles of my shoes grew mold. That's how poor
even within like the short time you were there.
It was not even 2 weeks. The soles of my shoe grew mold. So, I mean, maybe if I left them out in the sun or the heat, like maybe it wouldn't have been the case, but the air quality is so bad. People were dropping like flies. Like people were getting sick from the food. Food's not quite as controlled. And so, yeah, the bacteria is a little different. People dropping like flies, man. It was an interesting experience to say the least. We also got some like massages. They take their massages extremely seriously over there. It's like a 90-minute, 2-hour extravaganza. It's very cheap, and you get treated basically like a king, serving you fruit. You know, they do their feet for a little while, then they do the legs, and then a new guy comes in and does your back. It's like they do it right with the massages. So that was a cool experience too.
And then, so the gym was open at this time. Is there anything that changed when you came back from China?
Yeah, so it reinforced the things that I thought I already knew. So like individualized. And then we were starting to get guys that were pushing the envelope in their own respective sports. So again, that sense of urgency. So like you do have to toe the line of peak performance. And with that comes a certain buy-in and intensity that you have to go there. You have to get to those points. So I think like last week we talked about consistency and habit, and then like once you have that foundation and the time comes, like you got to kind of go for it, you know. Like when if I use baseball again as an analogy, but like football too, like you got to run a little bit faster. You have to you have to be pushing the envelope at all times, if that's what you're looking to do as an athlete. So there's like health and fitness, and then there's like I want to see what my body's capable of, and that's not a seamless, perfect situation. It's like you're going to experiment a little bit, and you're going to toe that line of safe versus unsafe, and you know that comes as part of the territory. I also kind of amped up the intensity and encouraged the intensity with some people. Like I remember people were self-aware when they would grunt, or if something got hard and they had to like really bear down, like you could see that they were uncomfortable, where you wanted to kind of make it okay. So I would notice guys would they'd be coming in for their second training session of the day. They'd get their bar out, and you're probably like sore and dreading what you got to do. And these guys would just like yell, like just grunt, like, ah! And you're like, what the hell was that? And they're just like, they got to go there. Yeah. And sometimes you got to go there. And when you're training, when you're a kid and you're setting a foundation, you know, I think they do that in martial arts too, where they encourage the kids to like, yeah, you know, like get into it, give it your best effort, and there shouldn't be any kind of self-consciousness to that. So that was one thing that I pushed when I got back to, like when I noticed that people were on the cusp of having to go there, like, okay, we're there, we're going to go there. Like, let's go there. Don't hold it back. Like, we're going to go there.
Yeah. If you're going to do it, you gotta go all in.
Yeah. Like when it comes time to sprint or test or something, like this is where there's no restrictor plates. Yeah, wild, savage. That's what I tell my kids, like go wild. I don't want any restrictor plates on, like see what you can do.
So in terms of resources for Chinese weightlifting, there's Jianping Ma has the book, just if someone wanted to learn more about it. What would you suggest? Yeah,
he's awesome. He's pretty accessible too. Like now, you know, I know they do like seminars and stuff for Chinese weightlifting too. I see more and more on like Instagram, like people that are there that are posting. I think being able to speak the language helps too. Like a lot of the stuff I had to learn through Jianping or vicariously, like I said, the one guy with the body language. But yeah, like if you could translate, it'd be a lot easier to get a lot of the information. A lot of the information was pretty consistent across the board too. So yeah, Instagram is a pretty good place. Jianping's a great resource. And yeah, I think that's about it. That's what makes it so mysterious. Yeah. Is we don't have like direct access. So it was like pretty cool at the time that like, I mean, it was a big deal to get into mainland China. Like they don't just like welcome people for no reason. You had to have a reason. You had to have a visa. People had to sign off and attest to you being there. And it wasn't easy to get in, so I was happy I got to go.
So definitely a unique experience.
Yeah, for sure. And that was part of the draw. Was like, if I'm into this, I might as well get into it. You know, like why not go and just wonder? Like, let's go get in there and figure out what this is all about. And I don't regret it at all. And like the experience too speaks for itself, because being able to come back and bring that mentality to our gym and to just have impacted people's lives and teach kids how to, if you're going to do something, do it right. You know, there's no point in wasting your time, my time, your energy and effort. You know, if you're not into it, then what's the point?
Is there anything you would have changed? Maybe like you wish you would have done more of when you were there, or asked more questions?
No, not necessarily. I feel like when I was there, some stuff still felt mysterious. But since then, like I said, there's some of the Chinese weightlifters have their own YouTube pages now. And so a lot of the things that I thought and had to verify in other ways ended up kind of being what I thought they were. So I think I had a pretty good grasp. So it was a lot of fun, fascinating, crazy stories. Got to meet a lot of Olympians and, you know, guys that you'd see on videos, and you see them in real life, and, you know, so yeah. And then we hosted that seminar. You were there. What was your experience? Like, what did you take away from hanging around those guys? And
it was kind of interesting because I feel like I don't know. It was kind of like a celebrity thing, I think, for most people that went there. Like,
well, to recap, so anybody that doesn't know, so several years ago we hosted a seminar. We had 2 world record holders,
Lao Hui and Lu Xiaozhang.
Yeah, they came.
And their head coach. So it was all set up by Ma Strength. I think it was 2 days, right? So we did 2 days. I think they did like a basic seminar of like snatching technique and clean and jerk technique. No demonstration, which I think some people wanted. Photo ops, since the like celebrity aspect of it. I mean, it was cool. Like, just even because I think the coach was like more into it, like giving people some advice and techniques cues. But like getting to hang out with them outside of the seminar was interesting for sure, because they like definitely are living a different type of lifestyle.
You got the behind the scenes tour.
Yeah, because we were in Chicago with them. They were shopping, fancy places I've never even knew about.
So we met up with them downtown on Michigan Avenue, and they were doing some high end shopping.
Like the Coach store, Ferragamo, all those like types of places.
Yeah, and they were
They were
purchasing
dropping some money, big time. And then they were smoking, which I wouldn't have expected. Like, you think, oh, these high elite athletes are gonna like treat their body as best as they can, and then
I asked them, I through the translator, I'm like, they smoke? Like, that's surprising. It gives you power. That's what they kept saying. So nicotine is an ergogenic aid. So it is interesting. They, you know, not that smoking's great for you, cardiovascular problems, but nicotine is kind of like caffeine. It gives you like a jolt of energy. So I can see why those guys would be.
Yeah. But then definitely, like, if you did speak the same language, it could have been way different, because I don't think they were talking too much to us in general. But if you spoke the language, I'm sure you could have gotten more out of them.
Yeah. What's cool is like just being able to spend candid time with Jianping for so many years. It like, you just would fanboy out and ask every redundant question. And one of the things that you start to realize is that if 100% of the training process, the questions that you're asking make up like 3%. And then so to go to the base and see that the training makes up the other 97%, and the attitude and the environment and the discipline make up the 97%, and then the little 3% sliver that you think is so important, like protein timing and like that stuff is easy. That's just habit. So like, those guys are lights out at 9:30, and then they wake up at the same time every day. So like they don't they don't waste time on the 3%. It's like, yeah, it only makes up a certain percentage. So here you're worried about these little minute details that should just be like habit. They don't worry about that because that's what you learn in the foundational place, you know.
I mean, that's like easy too. Like someone might listen to this and like, okay, if I train twice a day, then my Olympic weightlifting will go up. But there's all that other part, that 97% you're talking about, that getting the body work, getting the massage, doing the warm-ups.
And that's why they have to live the lifestyle, because the more stuff you put in your cup, like you can't train like that feasibly if you're an adult with a job and kids. And so that's where you have to like evolve. And that was also what was interesting to get John Pink's perspective about why Americans can't do the same type of training, because they don't go to sleep at the right time. You know, like so there's limiting factors, but those are the things that are going to break you. They're not going to necessarily make you. The training is what makes you. The recovery, the slivers is basically would break you. So like you get those things in order, training follows suit. And why it's not feasible for an American to train that way. He kind of even evolved his thinking. I mean, I'm speaking for him, but like this is our conversations, was it's different here. This isn't like a full-time sports school type situation. This is like these guys have to go to like university schooling for 7 hours, and then they try to come to weightlifting practice. It's not quite the same thing. Over there, that's their priority. School kind of takes like a little bit of a backseat.
Mm-hmm. It would almost need to be treated like a football or a baseball, softball, where you are starting when you're 4. I think maybe there's that stigma of kids lifting weights too young. So it's like, I guess that's an American thing. They obviously don't believe that since it's happening there. But unless you're starting so young, getting that super foundation, then you could build that physical attributes of the strength once you got the technique down. So, I mean, that could be one way to bring it up, because I know CJ Cummins, he started super young, and he's probably one of the best prospects for the U.S.
Yeah, but it's interesting. So, like with our sports, you'll let your kid pick up a baseball bat at 4, or play soccer when he's 4, or do, fill in the blank when he's 4. But then weight training gets a bad rap. But it's just like anything else. Physically, your body adapts to, whatever you're going to expect of it. And when you're young, it's better to expose you then, because you have just a better chance of developing the skill set. And then once you get to a certain age where you get the hormones start to change, you get secondary sex characteristics, that's when all of a sudden you get this like spike. So whatever you can do in that foundational period, and then you introduce like that, there's a little bit of hormone into the equation, and it's like crazy. Sit back and enjoy. And that's the fun part with some of our clients too, when they train when they're at a young age, and then they hit 14, 15, 16, all of a sudden it's like they just are able to do things that most people don't understand. That was Ben. Yeah. So my second time I went to China, I actually brought a 10-year-old kid with us.
He was only 10?
He was 10. And how at the time, weightlifting wasn't very popular in the United States at the time, but I noticed there were some, so the Chinese have like selective qualities for how they choose a weightlifter. And we actually used to have some of them built into, we used to train baseball and volleyball teams. We would do jump training. And one of their tests was broad jump. So they had 2 of the tests that stood out. They had broad jump, and then they would do like mental fortitude training. They would tell kids to do something, and they would see who would quit first. So they'd take the kids out to the track, and they say, start running. And the kids that were asking, for how long? Kind of a red flag. Then there'd be other kids that would just start running and just wouldn't ask questions.
Number 1.
So like mental fortitude tests. So this kid was like kind of showing signs. And then when we did start teaching the training, like we were teaching the kids how to squat properly, we were teaching them like with PVC pipes this kid was like mentally, he was very focused, he was eye contact. I'm like, something special about this kid. And so Ben had kind of made weightlifting his sport along with baseball, football, and the parents were very supportive. They were awesome. And so they knew I was going to China, and I think they may have said something along the lines of like, oh, that'd be so fun if he could go. And for some reason, it just like worked out And so we took him, myself and my wife, we took a 10-year-old to China and trained him for a week. And one of the coolest things was when we were there, he front squatted double body weight. So think about that. Take your body weight and double it, and then think of a front squat. So this is a 10-year-old American in China front squatting double body weight. One of the coaches came over and said to Jianping, he would be considered like on the track to be a professional athlete here for weightlifting. So that was pretty cool. It was a good compliment to me because I was kind of like taking the knowledge that I had and just kind of following my instincts and like to train a young kid, because you had to be careful because you hear all the, oh my God, weightlifting's so bad. So I had to follow my instincts, and I actually did my research project was on safety and efficacy of strength training for youth. So really the only thing that was deemed unsafe in the research, or contraindicated is the term, is that if you have kids doing excessive amounts of straining. So when I trained Ben, he was already kind of like a tough kid, so I almost had to kind of keep him from going too far too soon. So I almost had to kind of like restrict him. So I would basically watch the tempo of his movement. So when he would front squat, I'd just watch the speed of the bar. And if it looked like it was uninhibited, I'd let him put some weight on. And so it was very incremental. And eventually, by the time he was 10, he was front squatting double body weight. Going into high school, I think he front squatted 140 kilos, 308 pounds. As like, I forget what his body weight was, maybe like 135.
Still a double, yeah.
Yeah. So doing crazy things. And then, so now he was that kid. He was Jianping walking into the weight room, clean, strict press. People would see him, adults would see him and be like, what the hell's going on in here? And he was the nicest, most polite, hardworking kid. Very special kid. He helped teach me a lot. And it's been fun along the way too. Like some of the effort that people have put into these four walls, not only from me, you know, people that have worked here, Tim, Megan, but the effort that's gone into these four walls pretty much built the reputation or the brand of this place. The feats of strength from people's hard work and perseverance, and has helped create an environment that, you know, that was what I kind of hoped to create. So when I came back from China and I kind of had a sense for how to create that environment, that was what it was all about. Just creating the environment for people to train. And then it expanded into fitness, same kind of thing. People are coming here to get some work done and pursue their goals, and it's a unique environment. I mean, you've been a contributor, and we've all contributed, so it kind of becomes its own thing. It's just
environment is definitely key if you're trying to do something heavy, or can almost motivate you to do more than you would think you could.
Yeah, and it's the power of the group. And I think that's what group classes try to get at, like that real, like, yeah, the camaraderie of the moment and the social aspect of it. But it's hard to create, and you just have to like weed out the things that don't fit and the, you know, improper fits in culture, and you just create the right mindset, educate people and habits like we talked about last week. And then now all of a sudden you got something special. And then when the athletes push the envelope, the coaches have to get better. As the coaches get better, they produce more athletes to push the envelope. So it's kind of like it's a cool cycle, and it creates something like with a unique environment.
For sure. Would you go back after COVID?
I don't know if we're on the greatest of terms. I don't know. If that gets all figured out, yeah, that'd be fun.
What would you want to learn?
What would I do? I'd want to be like,
because this is like almost 10 years
I would want it to be like structured for a coach. Like I want,
okay.
like, you know, the Chinese head coach, I'd want to like follow him around and like ask questions. We were fortunate enough, we did go out to like a couple dinners, and like I got different perspective. There was like an army team, men's head coach, and like some of the things that he said like really stood out to me. So it'd be cool to like train how their coaches train, and like really get the background on how to, and just, you know, see if I'm always interested in learning, just to see if they have any other tricks up their sleeve and what they try to do with their athletes. So I've been extremely successful in weightlifting, but you see that attitude in some of our American sports like football, Track and field are really good. Basketball, like we produce some of the best, but we have like genetic freaks, but then they also have to have the mindset. So like we're very competitive in those sports. So
We also have a big pool for that. Same thing like with China, they have a big pool of weightlifting. So you get you'll like within that large pool, you'll find those genetic freaks, and then
they had rhythmic dancing and like the trampoline, those sports that I'd never really seen before, and they were training at the second time I went, and you saw how they were training and the seriousness of that, like just the level of training was impressive, and the diligence and the focus. And obviously it's not just, like I said, it's not just the athletes, it's got to be the coaches also, because their system is like, their gymnastics is insane, their diving is insane. So they handpick the athletes, but then the training has to be part of the equation too. So it is pretty cool. It's unique.